I want to make sure it's clear as I start this off that I am not somebody who is traditionally right wing, not left wing, but I'm by no means like a registered Republican. I've actually never voted. I go back to the Carlson mentality of voting, which is if you vote, you have no right to complain. Um, Look that up, by the way, for those of you who haven't seen it. It's a pretty good bit. But I'm not a Republican. If you were to, for those of you who know what the political compass is, who've ever taken that test, I'm on like the lower quadrant, pretty much in the middle, slightly to the right, just kind of above individualist and existential anarchism. Um, Pretty much apolitical in the sense of left or right. I definitely don't believe in large scale government. I don't believe in a federalist government. I don't believe that we need that or that it's helpful. I think it actually leads to large scale conflict instead of small scale conflict, which small scale conflicts can resolve small scale issues. With large scale conflicts, when it gets to that size, you have, things like World War II and whatever we're heading towards right now. That all being said, there is a phenomenon that I want to comment on, which is the pushing of centrist individuals like myself to the polar sides of the political spectrum, and honestly, I think most of them are going to fall right. Something that the left has to do, and this is likely going to fall on deaf ears, but maybe for anybody who watches this that is more of a centrist or a traditional Democrat, a kind of 1990s, early 2000s type Democrat, or, centrist in general, someone who's, willing to go to either side of the aisle depending on what they think is needed at that point in time, due to the rhetoric that is being pushed right now from both sides. But definitely I feel that the rhetoric from the left is a little zanier and definitely requires a lot of sublimation of ideas that are definitely not commonly held by people into an ideological framework that I think most people aren't willing to accept. There is a polarization that's happening, which is outside of the fact that, yes, we are very polarized right now in the sense of the political parties are at each other's throats and everything like that. But beyond that, the middle is shrinking, not only in the sense of economically where the middle class is going away, and I don't think those things are not intrinsically linked in some way. I do think that as the middle class shrinks, and honestly has almost disappeared at this point, so does the ability to maintain a political middle, because being middle class affords you the ability to have choices and decisions and a level of autonomy, which as financial constraints tighten and people move more to either being poor or move more to being wealthy, you're going to see people have political beliefs that coincide with that and are going to be pushed towards extremist beliefs in response to that. You can be pretty apolitical, you can be pretty laissez-faire about your political beliefs, so long as you pay your bills and food is affordable and you can take a vacation and life is pretty convenient and comfortable and happy. But the second that that's not possible anymore and that discomfort arises in the population, people are going to start looking for solutions. And in looking for those solutions, people are going to be pushed into the only large-scale political parties that are available to them, which are, as it stands in America at least, your Democrats and your Republicans. Now, there's a lot of claims that Republicans are fascists and white supremacists and all this kind of stuff, and I don't think that has a lot of credibility. I think there's definitely elements of that on the right, but I think that large scale, that those people who inhabit the right wing at this point in time are more reactionarily fleeing from the left. And this is because the left has continued to push their ideology further and further and further and further into extremely zany territory. I mean, the fact that you have to believe that a man who gets a sex change is now a woman, that is completely separate from the idea of believing that someone should be able to get a sex change. I believe you should be, and as an adult, fully capable of going and legally getting a sex change if that's what you want to do. You're an adult. It's your body. Do what you want to do with it. I believe that all drugs should be decriminalized and that you should be able to put whatever substance tickles your fancy into your body. I don't think that we should be outlawing any of that, because ultimately all that does is put money in the hands of criminals. That being said, the idea that you have to accept that children should be able to transition in single digit age numbers and that you have to accept that that is now a woman or vice versa, that is bananas. The fact that you have to essentially wholesale accept socialism or communism is what is getting closer to what's being popularized by the left. To be on the left is bananas. The fact that you have to believe in third term abortion, or even what's being floated around places as postnatal abortion, which you can just decide that you want to let that baby die at the day of delivery, right? I live in Minnesota. You can have the day before you're due, you can get an abortion, which fundamentally is, in my opinion, obviously murder. There might be some discussion about early term abortion or rape or incest or, you know, mother's life being at risk type things, which makes up, I think, about 3% of the abortions that happen. But the idea that you could go and the day before just say, yeah, that's an abortion, is completely normal and acceptable. These are not beliefs that most people are going to have. And I could be wrong there, I suppose, but I don't believe that those are naturally inherent beliefs that most people of any type of centrist mentality will have. I think likely those types of issues are actually what stop people from being on the left, because I think most people who are centrists, like myself, believe more or less in individual freedom and liberty. I believe that people should basically be able to do whatever they want, so as long as it's not causing direct economic or physical harm to another person, right? If you're not robbing somebody, if you're not defrauding somebody, if you're not doing something that is directly going to have a causal relationship to cause harm intentionally to another person, you should be able to do whatever you want to do. And nobody should really be able to stop you from doing that. The government should not get in the way. There should not be a moralistic adherence. There should not be where the church is dictating policy, just by the same note that there should not be leftist, virtuous ideology, so to speak, that is dictating what is right or wrong. I think hate speech, if you want to call it that, should be 100%. You can say whatever you want to do. If you want to hate Jews, you can do that. And you should not be punished on a legal level. Now, social, that's different. If somebody is a hateful, spiteful, evil human being, yeah, we have the right as a community to exclude that person. That being said, what is happening right now, and I think that this is, again, I mostly end up seeming to be doing warnings to people on the left to hopefully bring us back to a center in this country, is that they continue as a reactionary measure to move away from the center, because essentially what has happened now is anything is a centrist is a filthy centrist, right? Like, if you're not fully online with the party line, you're an enemy. I am finding myself having to defend Donald Trump. I don't like doing this. I don't really like Donald Trump very much. There's some things that I think that he's done that is okay. I don't particularly enjoy him as a person. I don't particularly think he's a great statesman. I don't think he's a particularly great person. I think he's probably pretty slimy in most ways. That being said, I more and more find myself being forced, I feel, to defend right-wing speakers, right-wing ideologies, right-wing concepts, because the left has decided that the middle is a no man's land and you cannot be there, and if you're there, then you're part of the right. And people have to understand that what happens when you continue to tell somebody that they're your enemy, they will become your enemy, right? Like, if I go and let's take it away from a political level, right? If say you have a coworker, and every time you try to talk to this coworker, they tell you that they hate you, you're probably not going to maintain a high opinion of that individual, right? If every time you try to talk to them about something at work, something non-political, right, they say they yell and they scream and they say that you're evil for wanting to organize the spreadsheet by the x-axis instead of the y-axis, or some other insane, inane issue that they've decided is now a moralistic issue that has nothing to do with it, you're going to start to hate that person. It is reciprocal. It takes a very large-hearted person and a very conscious person to be able to reject that instinct, and that is far beyond the scope of the ability of most people. We have got to, as a culture, stop doing that. The right has shown that it is more than willing to have a diverse, for as much as people say that Trump is a Nazi, he's got RFK, a lifelong Democrat, right? People can say he's zany and he's this and his beliefs are crazy and stuff like that. Sure, but he's also been on the left his entire life. Nancy Pelosi, Elon Musk until recently, right? Like the Trump's cadre of people around him are people of diverse ideologies. The right is accepting of people as long as they're willing to basically say, hey, like, I'm on your side. You can believe whatever you want. They believe in a level of personal, individual belief and just kind of bringing those disparate parts together and working towards a common goal. The left is not willing to do this. And the left will be perpetually not only poisoning the well that they're trying to draw water from and the continue to shrink. You see this in the approval ratings of the Democratic Party. But they're going to further escalate tensions between the parties and push people over to the right who don't want to be there. Right? Like, I don't want to be advocating for Donald Trump. I don't. I also don't want to be advocating for Biden. I don't want to be advocating for any of these people. If you're a politician, you're a crook. Like, it's a requirement to be the job of a politician is to be a liar. You have to lie. Anybody who thinks that these people are upstanding members of citizenship and should be people that we aspire to emulate, you've got bad role models. You have bad priorities. You need to realize that these people are con artists in the truest sense of the word. They prey on your confidence, which is where con artist comes from. It's a confidence man, right? That's where you originally get the term. They project a layer of confidence over their actions and we believe them. And then we go and say, oh yeah, their confidence wins you over. It's salesman 101, right? Confidence is king. Watch The Wolf of Wall Street, right? If we continue to do this as a culture, to go and create this disparate widening ideological gap, with the left being the one who is sprinting to their side. Like, you don't see people on the right running towards hyper-nationalist Judeo-Christian. Well, you actually kind of do a little bit in the recency behind Charlie Kirk and everything like that, which is an example of a reaction to what the left is doing, right? And the left could go, I know, say, well, we're doing it because the right was doing it. But that is simply not true. Donald Trump and his baseline actual policy is not far right. If you actually look at right-wing ideology, almost none of that looks anything like Trump's policies. The left has decided that he's an extreme right-winger, despite the fact that he's far more moderate, for example, than Obama was. He's more moderate than George Bush was, as far as policy goes, right? He's far more on the left than, really far more of a centrist than any politician in modern era that any millennial is going to remember. And yet he's labeled as the most far-right president of all time. These are not true facts. And if we continue to live in this realm of fantasy, what's going to happen is you're going to continue to push people who you could win over if you were trying to take a centrist middling view and come together and to meet in the middle and say, hey, look, we disagree on this, this, and this. You think this, I think this. Let's find a way that we can match up our ideas, and I'll concede here, you concede there, and we'll have a system that works. If that is not the overarching goal of both political parties, though I will say, from my perspective, the left is far more at fault in the recent dialogue and the demonization of their political opponents. But I could be wrong there. Maybe it's coming from the right, and everybody has the right to their opinion. Regardless, if both sides do not push towards the middle instead of pushing towards the extremes, we are going to see more extreme things happening. And I guarantee you that is not what we want or need as the American populace. That is not something we should be aspiring to. And if you think that it is, if you think that people like Antifa, if you think that people on the far right pushing for socialism, communism is the people that you should be following and listening to, please read a book. Please look at history, right? The only thing that this leads to is bloodshed and death, all right? And I'm not even saying that is a fault of communism or socialism. That was a fault of an extreme separation of beliefs and ideologies. Okay, it happened in America once already. It can happen again. We don't want that to happen. We don't need that on a global scale. Look what's happening in Europe right now, where millions of people are marching in the streets, and they're all on the verge of, they're a few years down the road from us, right? We have got to stop this running towards extremist ends of the spectrum, and we need to come together and say, okay, we agree on 9 out of 10 things. I'm willing to let you have your 10th thing. I'm willing to have my 10th thing. But the vast majority of things we agree. If we cannot get to that point, we cannot continue to coexist with each other. If we continue to become two countries abiding over the same soil, guess what's going to happen? We're going to eventually fight over that soil. Eventually, we're going to have neighbors what we don't agree with, and if extremism continues to increase, eventually it's going to get violent. And I don't think that that's what we want. This is Zach Attacks, and that's my attack.